This should be a very interesting session. We're going to talk about the holy grail for everyone here, which is commercializing your therapies and how to do that, and learning from experience of others of how they commercialized their therapies. So we have a stellar team here to talk about this. I'm sure it'll be a super interesting session. So my name is Eytan Abraham. I'm the Chief Commercial and Technology Officer for Minaris Advanced Therapies, CDMO multinational, working exclusively on CGT and also testing. So we have sites in the US, in Europe, in Japan, and including manufacturing of several commercial cell and gene therapy products. And very exciting times. I mean, on one hand, obviously, still some difficulty in raising and moving things forward, but at the same time, an acceleration of approvals, both for clinical stages as well as for commercial products. So definitely exciting time, and it's going to be really interesting to hear lessons learned from some people who've actually done it. So with that said, I'd like the panel to please each introduce yourselves, who you are, the company, as well as the therapy that you'll be focusing on for this panel. So please, yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm Dan Kirby, Chief Commercial Officer at Iovance. I've been in gene and cell therapy for the past 9+ years as the second commercial hire at Juno, where I was in charge of marketing, market access, and building the commercial capabilities through the Celgene acquisition. I've also been built a cell therapy company at OrcaBio before joining Iovance. At Iovance, we were the first ones to launch out a cell therapy for solid tumors in metastatic melanoma. We're also studying in lung and other indications. And I came to the company in February to help accelerate their launch in the US and build out globally.
Hello, everybody. My name is Johanna Rossell. I'm the General Manager for Rare Diseases at Sumitomo Pharma. And I have been there for almost 4 years. And we have an ultra-rare disease that is already in the market. But we also, in the regenerative medicine space, we have 2 compounds, one for Parkinson's and one for retinitis pigmentosa. I'm originally from Venezuela, but don't worry, I have been in the US for 20 years. I'm a US citizen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Helen Sabzevari. I'm CEO and President of Precigen since 2020. And our company focuses on cell and gene therapy. Specifically, the product that I will be talking about is our Papzimeos. It's in a rare disease field. We focus on a differentiated, a unique gorilla adenovirus platform, which we scaled it up and took it to the clinic in 2021. And in very close interactions, both on unifying our basically the platform as well as the indication with the regulatory strategy and also commercial strategy. We entered in 2021 to the clinic, and just in August, we received the full approval from FDA for Papzimeos for adult recurrent respiratory papillomatosis, which is a devastating disease, affects the formation of benign tumors in the trachea and vocal cords of the patients. It's around 27,000 patients. This product has a blockbuster, obviously, ability, and we are very excited to work on this, and we have been working also very closely with Eytan and his team, and it's really a great strategy of bringing various components and various players in this field together. So I'm very glad to be here with you.
Hi, I'm Curran Simpson, CEO of REGENXBIO. Our base technology was one of the original AAV8 and 9 called the NAV technology that was used for Zolgensma and other programs that are in late stage. As a company, we have 3 programs in late stage. One's an ongoing BLA review for a Hunter program, MPS II. We have a Duchenne program in the rare disease space. And then completely opposite to that, we have a retina program that's partnered with AbbVie. So both rare and non-rare late stage programs. My background is chemical engineering. but they do not allow me in the plant anymore, so banned. Nice to see everyone.
Great. Okay, excellent. So we have a good mix of modalities and stages and indications. So maybe I'll start with asking just lessons learned, right? Generally speaking, if there's one thing that surprised you during the process of commercialization or post-commercialization, for good or for bad, right? What would that be? And we can go by the order.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll give you good and bad. So
Great.
starting off with the good, the enthusiasm, especially going from mainly the liquid tumor space and cell therapy into solid tumor, the enthusiasm that the centers have to want to include Amtagvi in their portfolio. It wasn't a shocking surprise, but it was really a welcome surprise when you have the cell therapist and the medical oncologist talking back and forth, where typically they didn't. I'd say on the negative side of it, one thing that all the companies struggle with, and this started in 2017 with the first approvals, but really we have these, each company has their own way of onboarding and authorizing these centers. And I know it's a constant struggle with ASTCT, trying to help out. The centers are trying to help out. We're really working with the FDA to see if we can standardize some of these authorizations that go on for cell therapies, because it really is almost product agnostic sometimes when you're talking about delivering it. It's every product will have their nuances, but some of these things can be standardized. And that's something that I know the industry is trying to work towards, so that when new indications new therapies come to market, they don't have to go through a very time-consuming process, pulling staff from the center to train them on things that they've been trained 4 times before.
In our case, we are one of the first regenerative medicines, tissue-based, that were approved by the FDA. So the pathway has not been easy. In fact, we got a CRL the first time based on manufacturing areas. And I would say that a surprise or something different for all of us that have been in pharma for a long time, when you get a CRL, you typically will go to the FDA and have your type A meeting as soon as possible. Time is money, is resources, especially if you're a small company, you can't afford to take some time, extra time without having the answer to what you need to do to get approved. But in our case, we took a step back, and because of the interactions that we have had with the FDA before, we realized that we couldn't go immediately and have this type A. We needed to be more conscious that we needed to have a more, a pathway that was clear, alternatives, and make sure that the FDA felt that we had thought about the solutions, because we were creating the pathway with them. It's the first time our drug is, our raw material is the thymus from a child that is having a heart operation. We use that, we re-engineer it, and we make our product. So it was obviously the first time the FDA is seeing this kind, like how to make sure this organ has the same standards, and that we have been able to demonstrate quality and safety across the manufacturing. So we took our time, our regulatory team had a stronger proposition for the FDA, and we were approved 16 months later. So a very different approach for what you would do typically in pharma.
I think for us, has been a really exciting and interesting journey, because I'm an immunologist by training, and come from an oncology background, and of course have done some of the rare diseases. But what was very actually different, and it's both good and bad, because when you go to a rare disease such as RRP that for 100 years have not had any approved basically treatment, you're the first that have to go through the whole process. And not only the education on a disease, but alignment of the indication with the absolutely right platforms, which has to bring into play the safety, the efficacy, the durability of the response. At the same token, a right designs of the trial, and then really interaction with very closely with regulatory, both for clinical approaches, but also for the manufacturing approaches. So I think on both sides, it is exciting and it can be very good, but at the same token, you are the first one. And you have to basically establish the roadmap as you go along and make sure that you not only stay very close to your patients and patient advocacy groups, which play a major role in this, but also with the centers of excellence, that they really understand the disease. Because if you make mistakes in your endpoints, in the way you have designed the trial, obviously you are missing a major opportunity for the patients that, as I mentioned, these patients, some of the patients that we have treated, they have been dealing with this disease from age of 1. Some of them are upward of 350 surgery because there is no other treatment for them. Basically, they do the surgery in order for them to be able to speak or to breathe. So this is imagining that you take your child every month to a surgical room in order for the child just to be able to breathe. So I think for that aspects, for us has been very interesting to experience both sides. But also, I would say what has been tough is to go through all of this through pandemic, because we started our phase 1 in 2021, and you can imagine, we are very excited that we receive our approval in 2025, but again, it added a layer of challenges that we had to really account for.
I think on the good side, certainly the speed from entering the clinic to approval for some of the gene therapies is really good for patients and really good for the companies that are developing. But that also, I think, led to some of the bad, which is CMC got left behind or run over on the way to that. I think 51% of the CRLs that out of 270 had a CMC element to them. And I think also for AAV as well, the immune suppression regimens were immature at the time, and you're seeing that improving as well. So learning, pain along the way, but importantly, thousands of patients treated successfully that wouldn't have had that opportunity if development was really slow.
Okay, great, thank you. So actually to follow up on that, Curran, so obviously AAV is promising. AAV has taken some hits recently. At the same time, the costs are very high. So how do you see moving into the future in terms of the AAV in general, but also scalability and cost of goods for AAV?
Yeah, I think that's something where actually over time, CMC has caught up, and you see most companies using one of two platforms for production. And I think what that results in that's most important is the phase 1 study that you're running would be using material that's already going to look exactly the same, hopefully, as the commercial process. So that really helps quite a bit. No bridging studies required, and hopefully at a much better cost of goods than we previously saw with like the adherent technology that I think is now somewhat outdated. So I think it is really applying some of the lessons from biologics and applying it into AAV gene therapy that's been very successful to sort of turn the corner on that.
Great. So Dan, I mean, for you, I mean, you guys are paving the way for solid tumors. What does that look like in terms of commercial differences between that and hematological indications? What are the implications of all of that?
It's a great question, and it's something for 8+ years I was in or 8 years, a little over that, I was in the liquid tumor space. And when we talked about CAR Ts, the one thing that was at least inherent in the business model was that your referrals were coming from hemoncs out in the community into centers that had done transplant. And so your referral patterns were there. They needed to get augmented, patients needed to get there quicker, but you didn't have to create something from scratch. In solid tumor, what I find is that the medical oncologist doesn't understand transplant or cell therapy as much because they haven't been around transplant. They haven't had their entire training about the immune system and the impact of cell therapy. And when we go to educate them, we just launched a new educational campaign, in fact, last week, that's disease education, not even branded, just trying to educate cell therapy into medical oncology. because when they have a metastatic melanoma patient, they're not thinking about the third or fourth line they're going to take them to. They're just going to treat, the patient's going to break through, then they're going to treat with something else and looking for something else in their arsenal. Whereas cell therapies really should be used a bit earlier. We have second line plus indication, and really looking at this, we see patients that get to the centers too late. So when we have a center that works very well, I can tell that every time I sit down with them. You have Banner Health, part of MD Anderson here in the Phoenix Scottsdale area. I sat down with them on Friday, and you see the cell therapist there, and you see the med-onc there. The med-onc's in the middle of a 20-patient day, and the cell therapist is there just going through everything regarding cell therapy and when we need to get these patients, and there were really in-depth patient conversations. And that's the kind of relationship that we've been establishing in solid tumor, and there's been a lot of progress made in the last 8 months or so since I've been there, but I see that we're breaking down some barriers here, whereas we didn't have to do that in the hem-onc space.
So that you're saying that basically the connection and the education of physicians is key?
Absolutely key. And just having those discussions with both in the room, sharing their experiences and talking about their strategy. And that's been one of our biggest pushes lately, is to challenge the medical oncologist. What is your strategy here, and how does cell therapy fit into it? When are they going to get to Amtagvi? Are you going to put them on after they fail a BRAF MEK? If you do that, we don't have enough time to even get their tumor, let alone make product. They die. We saw a lot of that in the early part of the launch with it. We now are launching initiatives to try to get tumor before they start that medication, so that way when they go through, our label is previous treatment, that we can go ahead, intervene, have product made for them so they can use it when the patient can benefit, and not try to have a race against the clock for that patient. Can we get product before they die?
Right. Yeah, no, certainly a challenge, especially with your starting material being the tumor, right? And that's definitely a challenge. So Johanna and Helen, so I mean, for rare indications, for ultra-rare indications, obviously huge unmet medical need. At the same time, finding the patients, educating the physicians, and really getting those therapies to the patients. How do you approach that, and how do you promote that happening?
Yeah. So in our case, we're ultra-rare, so imagine that exponentially. There is no patient advocacy group that cares specifically about congenital Eytan, but that doesn't stop us from partnering with the immunologists, the patient advocacy groups that care about immune system issues for patients. And that's like number one, don't be afraid to approach a patient advocacy group that could help you educate. Because if they see that there is a company trying to help on a specific disease, could be rare or ultra rare, they will put the effort to help you, maximize the use of your drug in these patients and potentially save lives. Working very close with the academic centers, as you described, is very comprehensive. Like the moment that this patient is diagnosed, most of our patients touch at least 2 or 3 states to get to the academic centers that are going to treat them. So how do we create an environment where we help them educate to improve and make this diagnostic pathway or this patient journey as fast as possible, understanding what they need to be able to approve the patient clinically, financially, et cetera. So we created true partnership with our academic centers. And the other one that is really important, and we know this even if you are not ultra rare, which is the patient hubs. The patient hubs, when you are ultra rare, they are the base of your manufacturing, of your academic center, your physicians, your referring physicians. Everybody is taking advantage of services, and even before our hub is so comprehensive, the kids will get there months before, even sometimes when they are in the process of being diagnosed. So being open-minded that you are gonna need to put efforts not only for the treatment, but early on to educate everybody to accelerate that patient hub applies, and all of these learnings we are obviously in our new compounds like Parkinson's and retinitis pigmentosa, understanding like what are the things that are crucial that you need in ultra rare, right, for sure, but you are gonna need in any of the gene and cell therapies.
Yeah. So we are not in an ultra rare situation. This is RRPs are rare. But I think some of the things that is very, very important, and I fully agree, teaming up with the patient advocacy group when we started the patient advocacy group for RRP was very, very small. And these were patients that, as I said, for almost 100 years, they have not been paid attention to, and surgery has been the only thing. And all the surgeons agree that this is not a treatment. We are just putting a Band-Aid here, and they don't want to do this surgery. So definitely that helped in identifying some of the centers of excellence to go to, that they really understand the disease well. And one of the things we were discussing in, I think, the first day among various CEO meetings, it was really how do you accelerate the cell and gene therapy for rare diseases. And one of the things that, in my opinion, is extremely important is that you have to bring a various component together and really understanding scientifically your platform and making sure that that is scalable. But also understanding, does this platform apply to your indication? And then how do you design? And then really having a regulatory strategy in discussions with the regulatory bodies. One of the things that I think we all have gone through is, over the years, we try very hard because we need to be fast and we understand the need of the patient, but usually these components don't come together. When they don't come together, it leads to the lot failure. So I give you an example. In our case, we started, of course, in the United States with the FDA approval. We run 2 single-arm trials, but we had a very good understanding of the differentiation of the gorilla adenovirus from the rest of the AAVs and adenoviruses, and really had put a commercial plan plus a regulatory plan together. And 2 single-arm pivotal arms. And the clinical trial in one, the first one, we had 50% complete responders. In a phase 2, different set of patients, different situation, 52%. You cannot even come that close in a preclinical setting, let alone on a clinic. And then, of course, having the manufacturing right behind that, that basically you can move genuinely. So I think these are very important to advancing the therapies for rare diseases. And it really both makes the work for the company, organization, and patient advocacy group with the right hopes for them, but also on a regulatory side. It allows the regulatory bodies to not have too much of a gray zone. If you're showing the safety, if you're showing the efficacy, and it's logical, I can tell you we were on an accelerated path with the confirmatory trial, conditional trial being part of this, and FDA in August took that and gave a full approval instead of a conditional approval for Papzimeos. So I think these components really come together in order to advance the timeline and the rate of success for a cell and gene therapy.
Right. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about access and reimbursement, right? So certainly for rare indications and costly manufacturing processes, but also for larger indications, these things are a challenge. Maybe each of you can say a little bit about how you approach that and what are the strategies to get to a point where the access is good, but also the reimbursement is good, and it could be a profitable therapy on the commercial stage. Dan, if you want to start.
Sure. Access and reimbursement, it's the forefront of every single thing that we do. The center is not going to use a commercial product unless they know they're going to get paid. We can't even start manufacturing until we have a PO, a prior auth, everything's set. What I can say is the patient type that most of us are dealing with, from a payer perspective, they will cover, and they have been good partners with it as far as coverage goes. Rarely will we see a denial that we can't overcome. We're seeing less and less denials the longer we're on the market. We've been on the market for over 1.5 years now. But I will say the one thing that doesn't really get as much of the spotlight is the time to payment at the center. We have centers that tell us it takes 220, 240 days for them to receive payment from the payer. And that is something that we all need to work on together. We need to work with the payers, and we need to make sure that we have alternate solutions. Recently, we just opened a specialty pharmacy channel. We did this without jeopardizing the direct channel that we have right now. We partnered with McKesson Biologics initially on this. So they are our specialty pharmacy that we're now offering to centers if they want to have product, but they're either concerned about the cost density of what this is going to do to their books of carrying that bill for 220, 240 days. We now have an option for them to use a specialty pharmacy to get that going. So that is something that we have to be creative, but that's something we really don't talk about. I mean, these are sick patients. They will get covered. You can fight. You need the advocacy groups on your side. You need everybody on your side, but also too, as you talk to the centers, their concern is growing more and more about their time to payment.
So in our case, we're very lucky. We have strong data for our ultra-rare disease, and we have partnered with our academic center, which is Duke, has developed more than 25 years of data. So with an environment where you have very strong data, high survival rates, even with that, it's a strong case for access, where you need to ensure, and I would say, like, I extrapolate this, if this is our case and we have extremely good data, and we still need to make sure that when a payer comes, like, if you are gonna change standard of care, what is the benefit that you're bringing? And this is the same for the physicians and the academic centers too. So I know that not everybody can do what we have and have the same data, but I would say don't save money on health economics, don't save money on having a true natural history study that you can compare with your outputs. Show your commitment to not use just surrogate data or extrapolate, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to show that you earn your place in the standard of care, that you can change, and that everybody can do the math sooner or later, that this is the right thing sustainably. So.
Yep.
I echo everything what has been said. To add a little bit, I think it becomes very, very important. As we said, the patients are very well educated about what they need, and they are also very outspoken. I think the centers, and especially the field, sometimes has to, because they are used to certain treatments or the certain just taking care of the disease, not necessarily having a treatment. I think there is an element of the education there that has to be applied. And definitely, I think both private and public payers has to be addressed. And I think what payers are looking for is really, and we have had many discussions, and usually when they look at, again, the components of what is the basically efficacy as well as durability of response. This is really important, especially in rare diseases. And as much as making any, in oncology, a lethal situation to a chronic disease, which what we have been doing for past decades, really, as far as treatment is concerned, is extremely valuable. And it is valuable across the board for all diseases. But one of the things that I think is going to stay a challenge, especially with the costs of the healthcare, it's going to be the durability of a response. And this is something that not only the regulatory organization, they pay very much attention to this in conjunction with the efficacy, but also the payers. And I think bringing that data and information and educating the payers in advance, it will make it very much more easier for them for the approvals. And then also really giving these tools to the physicians to making sure that they have access to all of the data and information that it's necessary if there is, for instance, request for further information. So this can be done very rapidly and speaking to the timelines, so the centers can get paid much faster, because unfortunately, this is the reality of the things. We are not can control the payments to the hospitals, and this is something that needs to be addressed. But for the patient, we make everything and all the information for the physician ready, all the basically submission forms, plus assistance. Because for us, and I think I can speak on behalf of the whole panel here, that nobody wants to leave one patient behind. Every patient, regardless of their economical situation, should be able to receive these treatments. And this is one of the things that we are committed, and to make sure that we have proper assistance within the guidelines that we can actually offer for the patients as well, and the physicians are aware of it.
I think it's hard to add much to the list that's been made, but I think a couple of things. Don't skimp in phase 1, 2, because the first patients that you treat with what eventually becomes your pivotal dose represents your durability. Those are the ones you're going to be able to lean on for data to support that. And I think also for programs that have an accelerated approval pathway, paying a lot of attention to caregiver-reported outcomes becomes really important to the discussions with payers, because sometimes that association to a surrogate biomarker, to clinical outcomes or caregiver-reported outcomes, it's not as bright a line at a payer view as you would think. So we take that target product profile very early in development to payers and familiarize themselves with the program to help bridge that gap.
Interesting. Okay, that's some great insight. So I want to talk a little bit about manufacturing and about commercial manufacturing. So a couple things there. First of all, when should one start thinking about commercial manufacturing, about commercial capacity, internalizing versus externalizing, as well as COGS, right? I mean, obviously, the later you get in the clinical phases, the more difficult it is to change things. But how do you address that over time and take that into account in view of reducing the price to patients? So anyone who wants to start?
I can start. I think when do you start with the manufacturing? Immediately.
Immediately.
And it's very simple. I come from an R&D background, and usually we think that, okay, if you have a great research and you have a great clinical development and you understand all of that, basically now you have solved the issue. You haven't solved the issue, and it's the reality of the situation is you can have the best of the platforms and you can have the best of the ideas and designs, and at the end of the day, unfortunately, not to get to the approval, and you can't treat any patient because you don't have the right manufacturing material that has to meet that standard. And I think this is something that needs to be repeated over and over again. However, one of the things that, again, I go back, a lot of times we think about manufacturing in a very classical ways of manufacturing. And we are in a 21st century, and I think we can apply the similar innovation that we apply to our research and development to the manufacturing, and really come up with the designs, and especially even of manufacturing facilities that can meet the requirement. Because on occasion, on a rare diseases, reality of the situation, you are not dealing with the hundreds of thousands or millions of the patients that oncologists, for instance, have to treat. You're dealing with a very limited population. So therefore, necessarily the manufacturing standards has to stay high, no doubt about that. However, the approach for manufacturing the material that you need for hundreds, thousands of patients that are limited, then should be taught differently, and you should think about that from the very beginning. And I think this is one of the things that, again, we have been treating manufacturing the same way that we treat it for large indications, and we have not focused it for an innovation that it's needed for rare diseases.
So, I don't think there is one way. You know, in my past life, I have worked with CMOs that are very effective. If you find a business model that works for them at the same time that works for you, that could be a pathway. In our case, complex manufacturing, expensive, complex. So we couldn't find, you know, a good match to have a good business case for us, and definitely needed to start thinking on our own manufacturing facility. I would say never underestimate the difficulties, and I think everybody knows this. I have never worked closer with my CMC head. Blair must be around here. As you said, it's part of the development, and we know that the FDA is being conservative because this is a new area. They need to ensure that you can provide the same quality, the same kind of product again and again, you know, knowing that the raw material is totally different. So it takes double the time that what you think to get approved for each of the steps that you need to have for your manufacturing facility to be approved. So think phase 1, 2, if you have done the analysis and you know you're not gonna have a partner, is the right time to start thinking how to get approved with your manufacturing facility that obviously need to be run in a sustainable way.
I would just say one thing. You talk about the lessons of commercial success. I know back in 2016, all the CAR T companies, we studied Dendreon, and we looked at that and learned from what was a failure. Looking at scaling manufacturing and building up to the point where the company suffered. And you've seen that happen. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, on one of these stages, there was a panel, and the topic came up of scaling manufacturing. And 2 companies who had treated roughly 20 patients at that point were talking about how they were investing in scaling their manufacturing. Both of those companies now are owned by PE firms. So when you look at this as an emerging company, we partner with Minaris. We've had that since the Wuxi days, and back with launch to build out an efficient way to be able to scale our manufacturing. Studying all the launches with CAR Ts and seeing who did it well, I will say hats off to Legend. They did a great job. They had constrained manufacturing. They managed expectations at the centers. They were able to help predict how many slots are available for patients. And as they scaled manufacturing, they scaled up very well. And they didn't do it with pent-up demand, and they didn't do it with a lot of friction with the centers. So I do think with manufacturing, we have to make sure that we're forecasting effectively. When you talk about building out manufacturing, you mentioned your COGS, you're talking about real dollars. And in an environment right now where investment money is tight, we have to make sure we're responsible with that. And it is something to look at the lessons of the other companies before you, learn from them, find a way you can scale your manufacturing, plan for success, but also understand that there will be times when you have to do a dance with your manufacturing. My COO and I, we have great talks about if we see something cramping and we have a lot of slots there, how can we get more slots in that month? What can we do? And we've had success doing that and finding efficiencies and building some redundancies in the system so you have it. But you do need to make sure it's a balance, because there is a financial aspect to scaling up your manufacturing. And then if you don't have the demand there, you now have put your company in trouble. And that is something that, you know, we look at the companies that did it well. You want to emulate those as much as possible. Find partners that you can rely on at launch, and then work towards building it all in-house. But you don't need to do it all yourself. And I think as a community, all the companies, we can talk with each other and learn from each other on what's worked.
Curran, any thoughts on?
Yeah, we ran virtually for about 7 years, and now we've invested internally.
Yeah.
Just had our first facility inspection, which went really well. I think the main thing that we learned through that is invest in your process development group, in your analytical group. You should own the process and you should own the product. And if you can do that, whether you're working through a CMO or whether you have internal manufacturing, you're always going to know what's going on. And I think you're also going to be able to probably release product faster if you have control of your own analytical capability. So I think that was the sort of hybrid approach that we used that worked successfully.
Great.
COVID did not help, though. When we were fully outsourced, the inventories were a little thin, to say the least. But so having control of the manufacturing now is comforting, but expensive.
Yeah. No, it's a challenge. I mean, again, I think the insourcing versus outsourcing is always an interesting discussion, and it depends on a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, for commercial, you also need dual sourcing regardless. So you might end up doing both. So I wanted for the last question here, I just want to ask each of you, what are you optimistic about in the space and where we're going? And are we going to be able to start moving faster and to be more successful in getting to more patients and what that looks like? So Dan, if you want to start.
Just looking at this meeting and evolving over the years, just how we're starting these conversations and continuing those year after year, learning from each other and evolving. Going on to solid tumors is a different world than liquid tumor, but we know autoimmune's coming next as well. So really excited about the traction that we're seeing, but also excited about the future where we can take this to help more patients. But we need to work together doing it and help each other out as we go forward. But a lot of excitement in the future.
Same. We have overcome a lot of obstacles. We are not, like the beginnings of having the first drugs, but I am optimistic that the companies actually take advantage of the different pathways that the FDA offer to accelerate the approvals. I know that none of the commercialization is going to happen if you don't get approved, but I feel the more companies use, from breakthrough, fast track, in our case, orphan, pediatric, rare. I feel like if we don't underestimate that that's part of your core business case and core clinical development plan, I feel that we will be able to accelerate the way, and obviously the RMAT, to accelerate more drugs coming to market, even if it's ultra rare, to even bigger spaces like in Parkinson.
I agree. I think there is a lot of place for optimism here in the field. The innovative platforms that are coming, and especially in the rare diseases, that much faster you can get the proof of concepts here in the patients. This has been extremely important, and I think we are moving toward a new era of science and basically development that as we bring these technologies forward, they are proof of our platforms. Again, based on our experiences, we all have shown that you can take that platform now if it's a rare disease, and you can also now go to oncology or to autoimmune situation, and based on having shown the safety. And what I'm also very optimistic is really the interaction and the understanding of this and the interaction with the regulatory groups. As reality of the situation is everybody wants the safety and the efficacy for patient. And so there is no different basically concepts between the companies versus regulatory groups versus the CDMOs. Everyone in reality is after the same results. It's just a matter of us bringing it all together and having the concept that through a very close interaction with each other and in a partnership, we can move very rapidly. In a vacuum, we're going to be staying behind. And I think I'm much more optimistic after receiving all of these approvals in this field that we will be having a great future for our patients, that they don't have to wait centuries for a treatment anymore.
I want to give a shout out to Unicure for proving that good phase 3 data still matters. We have 2 pivotal readouts next year. I'm hoping same story, but I think that that's what's needed is people need to get to commercial status, the products need to be dosed safely, and we need to continue to see great efficacy for patients. And if that keeps happening and happens more, the industry will thrive through that.
Great. So certainly great messages in terms of the future. And we are making progress, so I do also believe that we're on the right track, but we need to keep accelerating and doing the right things early on so that we are successful later on for commercial, as you guys have been. So thank you very much for this. We're out of time. I'm sure the panel members will be happy to take questions after we're done. But thank you very much to all of you. Very good panel. Appreciate it. Thank you.